Hey, everybody, and welcome to Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football show. As always, it's Carter, Ben, and Mitch here to talk all things Alabama football with you. Yes, that's right. We have Ben, known robot, uh, known foreign robot, fresh off his like Twitter deep state analysis here to discuss Alabama football with you.
I really don't have anything to add to that. That was definitely the strangest thing that has ever happened to me.
Well, I'm impressed that are you a robot or are you me? We never really settled that question.
That's right. After I thought, after my first however many years on Twitter, that it was commonly accepted that I was just
that you were not like A, my burner account, or B, a robot.
but within the past month, the accusations have started flying around, and there's clearly I'm acting or tweeting more specifically in some suspicious way, and I can't really put my finger on it.
The tweets are too good.
I think it was I don't know, maybe it seems like there is some I don't know, controversy surrounding me now, so I'm gonna ride this out. They say no, what is it, no press is bad press or something like that. So I'll just hope that this is my brand now. I am part robot, so I'll take it.
Okay, well, coming off a fairly easy victory against Arkansas State, which is good. I think, we all, there was some possibility we thought going into this that maybe, not that it would be close, but Alabama would maybe give up way more points and yards than we would necessarily be comfortable with. But that didn't happen really. There were some issues, some correctable stuff coming off of it, but it's not like they, 2011 Georgia Southern did out there. So anytime you give up 7 points and as relatively few yards as you do to an offense that's that prolific, you feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I thought that. I mean, I don't know. I generally, I guess we'll get into specifics in a second, but generally my impressions were mostly positive. What about you, Mitch?
Yeah, I think there's probably a little bit more concern than the scoreboard might show, but yeah, I mean, generally positive.
So let's jump right into that. What's the first area, or what's first is the wrong word. If you had to identify the most pressing area of concern, what would that be? Coming off either as a result of specifically what you saw in that game, or as a result of what you saw in both games, what would you say is if you had to choose one thing?
I mean, I would say as something that I think exists outside of this. I mean, I think some of their quote issues might be just the fact that I don't know how much they game plan to counter Arkansas State. But to me, like the DB still struggling to get off blocks is somewhat concerning on the outside. And I feel like that's something that's not just a lack of game prep for Arkansas State.
That was definitely an issue. I chatted about that a decent bit on Twitter. That's actually a great place to start, considering what the, I guess, big news has been the last couple of days. They really did struggle to get off blocks. I know those receivers were, kind of big on Arkansas State, but part of this is that we're so used to Alabama DBs under Saban over the past decade, just being absolute monsters when it comes to taking on blocks, no matter the size of the receiver, constantly shutting them, constantly making plays, which made it very difficult for teams to make plays in the perimeter screen game against Alabama, because even if they had numbers out there, guys were just defeating blocks and making plays. And maybe you get like a 7 or 8 yard gain, but you weren't hitting home runs on screen plays, which you see across the country every week. Guys get offense outnumbers the other team, quick screen pass, guy goes for a touchdown. I mean, that stuff happens all the time, but it doesn't happen against Alabama. Now, it didn't happen against Alabama on Saturday, but we saw the beginnings of how it could progress to being a problem. So how much of what happened of this new alignment, a new alignment that clearly they were spending time thinking about even before this week, considering we saw plenty of this alignment against Louisville and then even more of it against Arkansas State.
Yeah.
So do you think this alignment is in, do we think it's in direct response to that issue? There's probably more to it. So what do you guys think generally about this?
Yeah. So just to clarify, that's, speaking of moving Trayvon inside to star and sort of demoting Shaheem Carter, if you will, to dime safety and playing Pat Surtain as sort of full-time outside corner. I think my guess would be, given that they were sort of working on this before, is maybe that, whether it's a combination of whether that, specifically getting off blocks in the perimeter game may have been the main impetus for it. But clearly there has been some thought by the staff that this could be the better lineup, right from the beginning, basically.
And
so
you pointed out that Shaheem is the smallest corner now.
Yeah, like it's not a huge difference, but at this point, like any matter of inches, and particularly in this case, like arm length. So like I don't know how we don't have like combine measurements on these guys, but
right.
It sort of stands to reason that taller guy, longer arms. But like Pat Surtain is 6'2", 202. I mean, these are listed heights and weights, obviously, but it stands to reason that they're they are proportional, I guess. But 6'2", 202 for Pat Surtain, 6'2", 199 for Trayvon, 6'1", 200 for Savion Smith, and then Shaheem, not small, but 6 foot 195. So definitely the shortest and lightest of the four of them. And so I think there's definitely a possibility that plays into it somehow.
Right. The size issue dovetails pretty directly with the issue of physicality on the perimeter. The other thing it does to look at this in probably in its most simplistic and probably an overly simplistic way, but a possibly instructive way, is that it inserts the most talented defensive back that you have in a full-time role in Pat Surtain. Even if I should clarify, talented in terms of his potential. That's not to suggest that he's the most capable defensive back at this moment, but I think it's pretty well accepted that he is the most talented. I mean, maybe Deontay Thompson, but certainly the most talented corner. And it kicks out, looking at your 6-man dime package, it moves out probably the guy you would consider to be the least talented player, right? In Maiden.
Yeah.
So it makes sense just sort of taking it that way, right? Least talented player out, most talented player in. And Alabama, there's more important ways to look at this, and I think we should get to specifically the Surtain element more. But Alabama has had issues. They've done this for a while, in numerous years over the last decade, where in dime they'll take the safety, move him down into one of the slot positions, and then put someone else in at safety, right? They've done this before. They were doing this with Hootie previously. They were doing this with Jabril Washington in the past. They've done this with other guys. They've had issues with that position just in general, right? Finding somebody who, and it makes sense, right? I mean, you're literally talking about your sixth guy, but they've had issues finding a player capable in that role. And you don't play dime that much, but you're going to be playing dime a good bit this Saturday, for instance, against Ole Miss. And I think that possibly Shaheem Carter is going to be more talented than the typical player that they've played in that spot.
Yeah. I mean, going into this year, like over the summer and in the spring and stuff, Shaheem was one of those guys that we looked at as sort of one of the better guys, one of the more experienced guys in the secondary. And so, if you're trusting in the development of Pat Surtain and that you're going to say, we're going to get this talented guy out there, and, early returns seem good on that. It's hard to, as overmatched as Alabama's two opponents have been, it's hard to say with any certainty, but he seems to have played pretty well. So if you're sort of betting on his potential, then you're looking at, ironically, like you're looking at even as little depth as there might be in the secondary, you might be looking at Alabama putting out one of its most purely talented secondaries in a long time. And if Surtain especially develops as you think he might, then there really isn't a weak link in the secondary, which even in years when they've had great secondaries, like last year, for instance, there was still a weak link, for instance, with Hootie last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, so I think it's everybody's very capable. Like you're talking about. And then, you also talked about making the investment in Surtain. And that may be, above all, is the biggest takeaway here, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Is that, you are saying that ultimately we're going, no matter what the case is right now, ultimately we're at our best if this guy is playing and playing well because of how high his ceiling is. So it makes sense to let him take his lumps now, invest in his future, and get him ready to go by the time the games really start mattering. And that's really, there's a lot of angles, a lot of ways to look at this, but that's primarily the way that I see it.
Yeah. And I think it's worth pointing out that, even for Alabama, as talented of guys that they pull in, and I don't think a lot of Alabama fans need to be writing about this in particular about him, but, Pat Surtain is not a normal guy in that regard. Like, not only does he have this prototype body and insane physical talent, but he's, right. His dad is a former All-Pro who was also his high school coach, who was also a good enough coach that he was legitimately being considered by Nick Saban to be the secondary coach this year.
Right.
So, it stands to reason that this isn't this normal sort of situation where you're just saying, oh, just put in the talented guy and let him take his lumps so that he gets up to speed faster. I think it stands to reason that he is a guy that this is not, throw the true freshman out and let him take his lumps. I think it, the floor here is a lot higher. Like the ceilings, it's not for a normal guy, it might be ceilings here or floors here, ceilings here. For him, it's, floors here, ceilings here.
This reminds me, I mean, there's not a ton of examples of true freshmen who were an early enrollees coming in and starting right away. But, the last one that did is Minka. And I feel like there are a lot of similarities here, both in terms of how talented the player is and in terms of what we would imagine to be their football aptitude or IQ or however you want to phrase it, right? Like these seem, I mean, and that was Star, this corner, but just it seems there are some similarities, I think, between the two situations. The last thing that I was thinking about with this, we already covered that it might not be a coincidence that it's happening before Ole Miss, because as Mitch mentioned, they struggled with the physicality and getting off blocks and everything, and that's going to be an even bigger issue when we talk more about Ole Miss, about the size of their receivers and the amount of times that they stress the perimeter, lots of horizontal stuff, most wide receiver screens and whatnot, but also AJ Brown might be the best receiver in the country, maybe. And AJ Brown, despite his size, almost always lines up in the slot. And maybe it's not, I could see them thinking like, well, this guy's going to be in the slot. That means that if we stay with our original alignment, that means Shaheem Carter's matching up with him. Maybe Diggs is just the better matchup there. Right?
It means your smallest corner is on a 230-pound receiver.
Right.
Which is, even if you have guys as good as Alabama does, that's not a nice matchup you necessarily want.
And Diggs isn't Diggs against Brown isn't by any means a favorable matchup, but I would consider it more favorable than Brown against Carter. Right. So it's like, you're making it might just be an incremental improvement in this one specific way, but it's not, but it's a potentially meaningful one, I think.
Yeah.
So Mitch, did you have any, so we talked about that concern. what else did you have in mind, specifically coming from the Arkansas State game? Anything else on defense? Was there anything else on defense that bothered either of you guys?
The only thing that bothers me is like it doesn't seem like Mac Wilson's foot is healthy, which is not, not good. I mean, he had a Jones fracture last year, and those things are so finicky. Like they tend to get re-injured very easily.
He has a lot on his plate, I think. And I don't know if that's quite being discussed enough. So not only is he potentially still dealing with this injury, but he's also taking on the role as the signal caller after playing somewhat sparingly last year between his reserve role when he was healthy prior to the playoff and his injury, which caused him to miss a few games. So suddenly he's going from being a sort of, rotation player, reserve type player, to the full-time signal caller. And he's also kind of his responsibilities might be augmented a little bit, just because they're kind of using Dylan Moses in a little bit of a non-traditional linebacker role, which is maybe putting even more on Mac's shoulders, just in terms of like regular run fits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is quite a lot. Like there's like a ton being asked of him, given all the factors involved here. And that is, I think, a little bit concerning, right?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, like for a third year guy to step in. I think you touched on, like, he's actually has less experience than other guys in his position in years past that have kind of stepped up and started signal call. And that to a lesser degree probably goes for Dylan Moses too.
Yeah.
In his position. I
mean, you think like I guess 2015, they had sort of similar dynamic with the linebackers between Reggie and Ruben, except that like each was a year older.
And Reggie was a full-time starter the year before.
Yep.
So I mean that's the interesting question. Has Alabama ever under Saban had their signal caller be someone who wasn't a starter the previous year? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Because Dupree started in 13?
Dupree started in 13, and then he was a signal caller in 14. Mosley signal caller in 13, started in 12. Nico Johnson in 12, played in 11. Like, there was so much continuity there between, having experience one year and then being the signal caller the next year. And for Mac, like, he doesn't have that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And again, we'll get more into Ole Miss later. But if this is going to be a competitive game, one of the reasons it will be a competitive game is that Alabama is just not getting lined up properly, and the calls just aren't getting in properly, and not everybody's on the same page, and they're giving up plays because of that. So this concern, there's some immediacy involved, right, with this specific concern. I don't really have much else to say about that, other than just I hope it works out, right? Yeah. I mean, like, there's not. I mean, you can't, like, somebody's got to call the signals, right? Somebody's got to be a signal caller. You don't have anybody if he's not 100%. They don't really have anybody to play in place of him. I mean, you're not going to send them to start playing, McMillan or whatever. And Dylan Moses has to, come along at his own pace. So it's just, he's very talented. He's extremely talented. He just has to sort of, get used to everything, all while hoping that, like Carter was saying, the injury isn't a significant concern. We'll see.
Yeah. The good news is that with regard to Ole Miss is, like, it's hard to see it. Obviously, we'll get into this more later. I was thinking starting our Ole Miss preview with, I think we should spend this whole time on the offense, because I don't think it's even worth talking about Ole Miss's defense. They gave up 40-something points to Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
So, we'll get to that. But I'm sure there will be lots of people, Saban included, wringing in their hands if Alabama has to win this one like 65-42. I, for one, will not be one of the I will not enjoy watching them give up 42 points to Ole Miss, but with where they are in terms of certain things that are happening on the defense, right. I can live with that. They've got time to get better. This is a survive game. It could be a blowout, but it won't hurt me too much if this is like a survival game.
I think this is one of those situations, just to sort of take like a long-term view of this, or long-term just confined to this year, but looking at the entire expanse of the season. This is one of those situations where you look, I think, relative to past Alabama teams, where you look at an entire unit and you say, it's this way now, but there's every reason to believe that it is the potential, just as a function of time passing by, that it has the potential to be a lot better, right?
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if there's a unit that I would say that about, offense or defense, going back a number of years now, where I saw, well, this is it's here, but it really has the potential for growth just by means of experience, really.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Experience for Mac and experience for the secondary, and hopefully some good news with injuries, primarily being Mac's foot.
Yeah.
But also
with outs, hopefully, some of the freshman outside linebackers growing into a role.
And then there's always the chance, I don't know how outside this chance is, but there's always the possibility of Terrell Lewis. I don't know. I mean,
if there's anyone that I would not put, it's him, right?
So I really think, I don't want to set this up to say that I think that Alabama is going to give up, 500 yards on Saturday. But what I would say, I guess, in anticipation of that possibility, is that I don't necessarily think that their performance on Saturday, if it's not good, is a reflection of what future performances will be.
Yep.
Just win the game. Because if they struggle, if there's issues, all that does is create opportunities to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be good to know now that there's a lot of things that they need to work on, and that there's a lot of areas of improvement, than to find out, in November. So, this is all about sort of building forward, right, to the end of the season and getting better. And this presents Saturday presents an opportunity to grow. Is there anything else we want to say on the defense, or do we want to quickly move on to the offense against Arkansas State and just general musings about the offense?
I don't think I have anything else on defense. I would do a quick aside to special teams to say that obviously that was not great. Bulovitz looked good after he came in, hit a 39-yarder and 5 extra points. However, Saban just name him as the full-time kicker going forward, which means that somewhere some evil wizard is casting a curse on him as we speak, and he will proceed to miss his next 3 under 30-yard field goals. But hopefully that curse is ineffective and Bulovitz will be okay. Anyway, offense.
Well, actually, really quick though, just staying on defense for a second. Saban talked about the punter not playing well. I have to admit that I wasn't super focused on Alabama punting the ball on Saturday. I was kind of, these paycheck games are kind of spaced out during them a little bit sometimes, especially
if the offense keeps being as good as they are, they could put me out there at punter, and I would not be concerned about it.
But did you guys have? I mean, what did you like? I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch. I really didn't. Like, Mitch, did you have any thoughts on the punter?
I'm not sure I saw a punt, because I was flipping back and forth between this game and the Osaka Serena match.
Yes.
I was in Austin this weekend for my bachelor party, so I saw this game very sparingly, and punts were not a part of my focus.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I should have went back and rewatched it after that saving quote, but I didn't. Okay,
his averages have not been great, but again, it's not something I'm super concerned about at the moment.
Right.
We'll have to, then we'll have to reconfigure your code to make sure next time.
My settings are very focused on offense and defense, and I just
that's my bad. That's my bad.
Yeah. Yeah, we got the robot and the programmer over here.
I gotta stop skipping over the special teams. Offense was good. My first thought watching live, and again, I have to admit that my viewings of the Paycheck games live can be my viewings live in general are not always as I don't know, like I don't gain the same insight watching live that I do watching replay for a number of reasons.
That I think that honestly goes to the heart of like why we do this show. Right. But if you were to distill that into a maxim, it's like, don't trust your first impressions of when you're, especially as a fan, when you're so invested that like everything produces an emotional response in you. Like, don't take your first impression of a game when you're watching it live as a fan as like the gospel truth. Like, that's even also, people who are really good at this need, like, coaches watch film. There's a reason coaches watch film. Like, you can't see everything in a football game live, especially if your responses to it are like primarily emotional, which is true for a lot of us. Yeah.
Which is right. And which is kind of some evidence that I might not be, a robot. But
that's why Ben's better at it than the rest of us, because his emotion settings are
very low. But anyways, my sort of, very I didn't feel this with a lot of conviction, but my first impression was that, Tua wasn't awesome. I watched.
He wasn't. I mean, he definitely he produced a very obviously turnover worthy play in the first quarter when he basically threw it straight to an Arkansas State player.
Right.
I mean, because you just think even if you were to ignore last year on which he think about his interception against Georgia, that was oof.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to forgive stuff. The crazy thing about that game is it's he was coming in with a very limited playbook in the second half of the national, all that stuff. Right. But even if you were expecting to take this huge leap and be even better this year, the way that he played against Louisville, which was basically perfect, except for one overthrow to Judy in the end zone. That rate, and first of all, that's on a small sample size. That was on 16 pass attempts. And that's just unsustainable. So he was still spectacular. He still threw for, 230 something yards on 19 attempts and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But he was definitely, I definitely felt like he was not as sharp as he was against Louisville.
But I would say, not as sharp, but still really good.
Not as sharp for Tua is we're splitting hairs here.
There were two throws. Obviously the touchdown to Derek Keefe on the corner of the end zone. That was an unbelievable play. Just the movement in the pocket, and then just that throw is just incredible. And then the corner route to Irv Smith, coming from the left hash, throwing it outside the numbers on the right side of the field. Just,
was that the one where the camera guy just completely lost the ball? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Ball went over the camera. Yeah. I mean, I started to try to do the math and then I stopped because it's just really hard for me. But the throw was caught 18 yards past the line of scrimmage. He dropped back. It's an extremely far throw.
Yeah.
And it was just right on time and right on target. And that's just, it's just pretty remarkable. He's just great. The third down numbers are unbelievable.
Well, and another, I think it was on the first touchdown to Judy when it was off a little slant on an RPO, I think. Or I don't even know if it was an RPO. I think because Saban said something, it was he wasn't even supposed to be reading that side of the field on that play. He just saw the corner blitzing and knew that he could get it in behind him to Judy on that side of the field, which is just that's NFL level quarterbacking right there.
Yeah. That's yeah. Yeah, that is impressive. I didn't know that, but that's really impressive. Mitch, what about you? Just general impressions of Tua?
Yeah, I feel like more and more like it's hard for me to appreciate how good he is at everything because of how good he is at like
Yeah.
there were plays in that game like one specifically where he like climbed in the pocket. They were going right to left, like, and
On
it was
that on that third down,
yeah, and the way I was like, what? That's incredible. Like his footwork and like just keeping his eyes downfield as he stepped up in the pocket. I was just blown away, man. Like he's so good.
Climbing the pocket is something he does really well. Obviously, like, not to make this about Jalen, but that's like one thing that we talked about constantly with Jalen is like, you got to climb the pocket. You got to climb the pocket. And two, it's just instinctive, I think. And Tua
Yeah.
just instinctively just feels the rush, climbs the pocket, moves up into space. And the results are so, like, that is such a big deal for me to see, like, a quarterback who has that feel and who steps up and climbs the pocket when the opportunity presents itself. And I think you kind of have it or you don't have it.
I mean, it's something you see all of the really great like pocket passers, regardless of, what their actual like mobility level is. But
Right.
like you watch, prime Peyton Manning, or even like Tom Brady now, and like those guys couldn't run for crap, but like they just have a natural feel for how the pocket develops around them and where to find space in it as the sort of rushers collapse and the linemen are moved and stuff like that, and they just know how to find space and buy time.
It's 2 weeks, so take this with a grain of salt. But is he maybe the best quarterback in the country? I mean, I know the Heisman odds and everything, and that's instructive to some extent. But that's also a product of just the surrounding talent, at least in part. But like,
Yeah.
is he maybe the best in the country?
I haven't done a
Right, neither have I. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's certainly got an argument for it. I mean, who are you right now going to plant your flag on a guy and say this guy is on to his level?
Right, because the guys with the talent, like the guys like the Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, like they're first of all they're true freshmen. Second of all, they're not even necessarily the starters right now, right? And like those are the guys that are just on his level talent wise.
Like even if you go back and include the guys from last year that all got drafted this year, I mean, I'm not certain I would feel great taking any of them over to this year.
That's where you really
I might take last year Baker Mayfield.
I mean, that's the only one
over Tua right now.
Yeah, that's where you're really testing it. Is like, would you take Tua right now over 2017 Baker? Like, if maybe the answer is yes, but
because I mean, I feel pretty comfortable saying I wouldn't take Darnold or Allen or
definitely wouldn't take Allen.
Nope. Yeah, no.
But I mean, that's like it's like a meme at this point. But I definitely not taking Allen.
But yeah, he's at or just below the level of 2017 Baker, at least from what I can see in 2 weeks. I would
tend to agree. He's really good, and the Ole Miss, Luke, the Ole Miss coach, he was talking today, and he was harping on to his decision making, which in all our time gushing over him the last 10 minutes, we didn't even mention that, which is maybe like his best attribute. Like he's just, well, Carter touched on it a little bit with the throw sort of going off script, and that's an element of decision making. He's just always right. I mean, he's always right in his decisions.
Well, even the one he almost threw a pick on, like if it was like the DB made some weird, like
Tua thought he was going to sag off on the out route, and then he got some depth, and it's kind of a weird play. I kind of agree. Like I understand why Tua thought that he was going to have that throw. It wasn't like an egregious error, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, especially it's the sort of thing where he sees the field and makes a decision and gets the ball out so fast that 95% of that percent of the time, especially at this level, that throw is not going to hurt him. Like he's going to get it in before the DB even has time to process what's happening.
Right. Just sort of looking at this long term, I touched on this on Twitter a little bit, but it's so the potential here is so exciting just because this idea of having, like, looking at that chart from, I think it was like College Football Film Room or something, of like all of his throws, completions and incompletions, and just the efficiency in the short and intermediate part of the field is something that they've really never had. So that's exciting. And then you sort of see also all that untapped potential down the field, what the efficiency at this level, the way that sets up the efficiency at the next level. So, it's just really exciting.
Anything else quick on the offense? We should probably move on to Ole Miss.
Yeah, let's go on to Ole Miss.
Okay. Well, like I said, I don't know that Ole Miss's defense is really worth talking about. So Mitch noted this in our group chat earlier. So Ole Miss has 2 blue chippers on like their entire depth chart on defense, which for the record is the same number as Arkansas State and 4 fewer than Louisville.
Yeah, this is not your dad's Ole Miss defense. This is not your older brother's.
Yeah.
Not your slightly younger selves.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of blown away by that. And one of their blue chippers is a nose tackle who I can't foresee having a huge impact on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a pretty epic mismatch. I agree that's probably not worth talking about.
So Javonte Ruggs, Henry's little brother, is a linebacker.
Okay, I didn't know that. This is cool. It's older, younger?
Younger.
So freshman this year.
True freshman, yeah.
What's the median percentile performance here?
In terms of
points, just in terms of points from the Alabama offense on Saturday.
Oh, I'd be shocked if they're anywhere below like 45.
So is the median is the median 50? Like what's their like 20? What's their like 20th percentile performance look like?
35. All right. So here's my thing on that. Like, are they going to come out and try and score as much as they can, or are they going to come out and try and control some of the game because of the potential defensive issues?
This sort of dovetails with a question we got from
this is from Singapore slang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take these one by one. Question 1 is, what percentage of the Ole Miss game do you think Tua plays? Tua plays well. I don't think this is going to be one of those games where, like the Louisville game, where Jalen was going to get in the game after X amount of snaps.
I think this will be a field game. Yeah.
This is Tua's game until it doesn't have to be Tua's game. I don't know what that means. If Alabama goes up 21-0 after the first quarter, do they get Jalen a series? Maybe. I don't know if Saban wants to take any chances on the road in Oxford with the explosiveness of their offense, which dovetails with question 1B, which is, considering Ole Miss can score quick, does Saban take his foot off the gas if they go up early? No.
Yeah, no. Like, I don't think you've seen, like, this is, like, I don't even think it's so much of a matter of Saban taking his foot off the gas. I think this is one of those things where, like, this offense is just so good this year that you're not taking your foot off the gas until you put the backups in, basically. And so they're just going to, like, basically score at will until Saban decides the game is out of hand.
I don't see, even at 21-0, hopefully this happens, but if it does, I honestly don't see him making a quarterback switch. I really don't. He was willing to take chances in the Louisville game when there was still this idea of a quarterback battle, and obviously he was quick to pull 2 against Arkansas State in a paycheck game. I would be very surprised if they lost Saturday, but it's just not the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a road game. It's a conference game. It's against a really, really, really good offense. So, like, he's not going to do anything to diminish the potential. He's not going to do anything like volitional to diminish the potential.
Yeah. I could see it being if they get up like 21-0 early. I don't think you'll see Tua get like pulled. I think you might see it a situation there where he would do something like Louisville, where it's like bring in Jalen for a couple series and then bring Tua back in. And it might hasten bringing Tua back in if Ole Miss gets a couple scores back. But I think at this point, and this sort of goes into the next question, like seems to be committed to getting Jalen enough time to where, like, I think if you're in the like a 21 to 28 point lead, at that point, you feel comfortable enough giving Jalen at least a couple series because like you still have a pretty good chance of scoring. And, you know, you can always put Tua immediately back in if things start to go haywire.
So that's interesting. Mitch, how do you feel about that? Because if I actually, I mean, I certainly acknowledge it's possible, but if they go up 21-0, 15 minutes in, I don't really see that. I kind of don't see him taking that chance in this game.
I think that's probably, I mean, that's what I would have said.
That you think Tua would stay?
No, that if they get up 21, so like if it goes as expected, they get up, they score at will the first three. Now, of course, if it's 21-21 after three, I don't know that I would expect to see Jalen.
Oh, right.
But I would expect to see him take some early snaps in the third quarter, some early series, and then have Tua back in there.
Okay, third quarter,
second quarter.
Let's say exact same situation as Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama was up 21-0 after 4 possessions, but it was really quick, right? Like maybe it was still even the first quarter, possibly, or early second quarter. Okay, yeah. Same exact situation. You think he puts Jalen in there?
Yep.
And Carter, you do too, or you think he might?
I think it's a possibility. I think the possibility is like you said. I don't think it's going to be like Jalen goes in after a couple series, no matter what. No,
right.
It's definitely going to be a field situation.
Is going to matter. Yeah.
Yeah. But it could. I think there's a possibility he brings him back in fairly early if Alabama appears to be just, you know, like the defense is playing great and they're not, you know, like, and they're just scoring at will on offense. I could see it. I don't know if it's what I would do. I would want an even bigger cushion. I would want
It's not what I would do either.
I would want to like drive it to garbage time before you even think about it. But
it has the potential to drive up your play count on defense. Not that is a huge issue for the game if you're already up a bunch. But
wait, to drive up Ole Miss's play count?
Yeah, when Ole Miss has the ball. I mean, if Alabama just continuing to score really fast, it's giving Ole Miss more possessions, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's just not a compelling enough reason for me. I just see this situation. Like, I just see this situation where it's 21-0. They put Jalen in, and then Jalen just makes one mistake. You know, Tua could make a mistake too.
Yeah, but the perception is going to be so different if Jalen comes in and does it.
Jalen just makes a mistake. They score. It's 21-7. They're going crazy, you know, in Oxford. And like, geez, like now I'm a little worried. I wasn't worried, but now I'm a little worried. And I just, that fear alone would prevent me from making that switch. We'll see hopefully we'll see what Saban does, because hopefully they're faced with this predicament.
And then this is sort of a broader question, but the next one is, does it appear like Jabin isn't redshirting Jalen? Yes, because if you're redshirting him, why do you play him against Arkansas State? What is the thought process there? I think Saban sort of alluded to this in some of the comments he had to people asking him about the possibility of the redshirt rule. I can't remember. You'd have to look up exactly what he said, but he basically said something. It's like he said like, you know, that could be a thing that's possible, but like I don't know how you do that, because it would essentially mean Jalen being like, he still needs to take a lot of reps in practice because he's the backup in case Tua goes down. But then you're not playing him at all. And I could also see it where, like, as much as we have all opined that this is the best thing for Jalen, I could see him not wanting to do that, because I can absolutely understand how a guy in his situation would feel like, even though like the teammates stuck up for Blake Barnett when he literally left the team in the middle of the season. I don't think the other guys on the team would begrudge Jalen for doing this. But I could see how he would feel like, how anyone would feel like in that situation, that you were kind of quitting on the team by going to your coach and say, please don't play me in more than 4 games unless I have to. Like, that may not be entirely logical, but I can absolutely understand how just, the odd logistics of how he would have to manage that situation, and Jalen's sort of personal feelings of like, I'm a part of this team. I've been a part of this team. I want to stay. I want to be a leader. I want to graduate. How he would just not be comfortable doing it, even if it's like the best thing for his future.
And unlike Blake, Jalen would be doing this while he's actually there. Right? Yeah. Like, he would have to like be there, be with his teammates, be at practice, but also say at the same time, like, by my own choice, I'm just not going to play anymore. Yeah. And like that, I don't think his teammates would begrudge him for that. But I agree with Carter's point that there could be a real feeling of awkwardness for him personally about not wanting to be in that situation. So...
yeah, I do genuinely wonder, like, why, like, because it's not a source that I feel like would just kind of make that up. Like,
talking about Aaron Suttles.
Yeah, Suttles bringing up the whole redshirt thing.
I still want to know what exactly he said on that radio show for them to say, like, Aaron Suttles has confirmed that Jalen Hurts is going to redshirt, because like I have an Athletic subscription, and so like Suttles works for them now, and I read like his column before the Arkansas State game, and he discussed it as like this is a thing they could possibly do, but he definitely didn't say like, I have a source that confirms they're going to do that, or like, this is absolutely what I expect to happen. It was in much more like, here's a possibility terms. So I wasn't be surprised if that was sort of like a poorly distilled thing of his words, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were all kind of a little skeptical at the time, right? And I mean, I like you said, I wanted to hear the clip at the time, and nobody seemed to have it. So, I don't know. That's like a big thing to say.
Yeah.
It's like
the fact that he just never even like attempted to like tone, like, even after his, I don't know,
like there was I kept going back to his like Twitter feed and seeing if he was going to say anything or clarify anything. And I mean, I don't have access to the Athletic, but I assume, Carter, that he hasn't written any follow-ups about that. So, so this is, I mean, it's sort of mysterious to me. I would also still like to hear what he actually said on this radio program. That's probably not going to happen. And he's probably not redshirting. So
yeah.
Should we move on to the sort of the most interesting
the
aspect?
Premier matchup.
Yeah. So the Ole Miss offense is good. They were good last year.
They're real good.
So far they're really good this year. I think that before the season they were projected offensively to be like 4th in S&P plus.
Currently number 1.
That's good. It's really good. Arguably it can't be better. Not arguably. Inarguably it can't be better.
Alabama, for the record, has the number 5 offense and the number 7 defense.
Oh, okay. Alabama would be higher probably if they had, on offense, right? If they had, let's say, played to maximize point totals. Throughout those games. They didn't do that, but that's fine. So they're good. The receivers are the best part of the team.
AJ Brown and
Metcalf
are DeMarcus Lodge is
Lodge supposed to be back? He I know he sat out the Southern Illinois game because he hadn't passed concussion protocol. But I kind of quickly searched today. I couldn't really find anything. So I'm assuming that he's going to be back. The fourth receiver, Sanders.
I think he's going to be back.
Yeah, the fourth receiver, Sanders, is a good player too. So like, I mean, they got some receivers. They've had some receivers.
Their tight ends on some watch list, I think, as well.
Like Dawson Knox, I think is his name.
Just like going back.
Isn't he the one who like hurt Deshaun Hand last year?
Oh, I don't know. It's interesting. Just like going back to when they got Treadwell, right before 2013. Like since then,
great receivers.
Yeah, they've just had like dynamite receivers ever since then. So.
And like they're not just good. Like we've hinted at this. Like AJ Brown and DK is what he goes by.
I think so. Yeah.
They're huge dudes. They're massive. Like AJ Brown is like 230 pounds, and I think he's the smaller of the two.
Yeah. What's the nickname for there's like a nickname, right?
Oh, they're NWO, the Nasty Whiteouts.
Ah, okay. So I knew it was
not
NWO.
If you thought that was an NWA thing, that was not. No, that's not what that was. Different thing.
I heard NWO. So I knew.
I think it's their Whiteouts coach is like a big like 90s wrestling fan.
Okay.
And with apologies to all the like WWE fanatics out there, I'm not a wrestling guy, but I think that's like NWO is like a 90s wrestling reference.
I heard that today, the NWO thing, and I was thinking like, that's not like the first letters of any of their names.
Yeah,
like, no. Not really sure I get this, but okay, nasty Whiteouts makes sense. Yeah, they're really good. They throw the ball a lot. They threw the ball as much, if not more, than basically anybody last year. Like they throw it on standard downs, they throw it on passing downs, they throw the ball. They've thrown the ball so far this year. Their total seemed more balanced at the end of the game, especially like in the Texas Tech game, because they ran the ball at the end when they were trying to sort of protect a lead.
Yeah.
And then the Illinois game.
They run fairly well. Like the back, Scotty Phillips, I think he's a JUCO guy, is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get to watch a ton of their game against Texas Tech, but like he's pretty fast and he's pretty good vision, pretty shifty.
He is good. My takeaway from those games was that the bulk of their success rushing the ball was a function of just like the other defenses just sucked, and like the schemes.
You pointed this out on Twitter that like the Texas Tech defense was just misaligned.
Yeah,
like
they were just doing some weird things. And there was a couple times where they got like aligned like in sort of like a more traditional formation, and they got some stops. So like, they some weird alignments, and obviously like some serious lack of talent on both of those teams defensively, I think really contributed. I don't think that I don't think that they can run the ball on Alabama.
No, the thing is they really only run the ball as like a constraint play,
right?
Basically,
and that seems to get pushed to the extremes against Alabama. Like they didn't beat Alabama in 2014 or 2015 from running the football. They beat them by throwing the ball, and they almost beat them in 2016 by throwing the ball. So they're going to throw the ball, I think, a lot.
Yeah,
like nonstop.
Like the Alabama defense isn't going to like they may have a bust here or there, but the Alabama defense isn't going to be like caught out of position just because they're like misaligned, or just because you're using a run as an occasional constraint play. Like it's not. I would expect there to be basically zero rushing success against Alabama.
Yeah, I agree. What they will do is they will throw the ball. Because that's the only other alternative. And also because they're good at it. Like really good at it. We covered the wideouts. The quarterback is talented. Kind of, I guess, I don't know what the best word here is. A little unrefined, maybe.
A lesser Tua, I think.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Hawaiian comparison. Like there are some similar. I don't think he runs as well as Tua. I don't think his field vision or his decision making is as good as Tua. His arm talent is pretty good though, and they put him in situations within that offense where he can consistently succeed. He's exactly the type of quarterback they need in that offense. He's kind of like Chad Kelly, but minus the full Chad Kelly part.
Yeah, the full Chad Kelly part. And then maybe some similarities with like Kellen Mond. Like I kind of like I watched him a lot, obviously against Clemson. I kind of felt like I was watching a similar player with how do we say?
Also, nice to by the total aside, but nice to be vindicated about Kellen Mond. Like I was at that A&M game last year, and
that's right. You were like them. Yeah,
they had a lot of uncertainty, and Mond got benched for Nick Starkel. But like some of the stuff you saw him do against Alabama last year, like that wasn't Alabama being bad. Mond just made some crazy plays in that game.
Yeah,
and
he's talented.
It's taken a while to come out, but it's nice to be vindicated and be like, oh, that guy's actually really good.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was impressed. There was a lot that was asked of him against Clemson, and he played well. How do I, just before we go on, because if I don't ask him to keep mispronouncing it, how do I pronounce the quarterback's name?
Ta'amu.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just like it's exactly like it looks, except like that apostrophe's there to like kind of remind you to pronounce both A's individually.
That's very useful.
So if you're being slow, if you're slowly sounding, it's Ta'amu.
Ta'amu. Okay, Ta'amu. I like this. It's easier than Tua's last name, which I really still like can't pronounce. Actually,
it's exactly like it looks if you just sound it out real slow, except that you replace the tag part, the very beginning,
with tongue, right?
Yeah. So it's Tungo Vailoa. Tungo Vailoa. Yeah.
Because I was asked, you would think like, obviously like super into Bama football, watch the games, whatever. I was asked the other day by somebody like, how do you pronounce his last name? And I was like, honestly, this is weird, but I don't know.
It's better than if you go to his Wikipedia page, they now have his full, because this is pretty common in like Polynesian Pacific Islander cultures. The first name will be a shortening of an actually like much longer name. If you go and look at his full first name, don't even ask me to try that one.
So it's not actually Tua.
No, it's hold on.
Do you know how to pronounce it before? Do you actually?
No. I'm just looking at what it was.
Wing it?
Well, I feel like this is important too, given that we may have to do this for another 4 years or so.
Yeah.
The last name, at least.
Tuaniga Manu Olepola.
I would say that sounds pretty good to me. That's I
mean, like these languages aren't like hard as transliterated into English. Like there might be there's like, if you know the language, I'm sure there's like, finer pronunciation elements that I'm not getting, but like they're pretty phonetic as transliterated into English. So if you just go slow and sound them out, you're gonna be right. You're gonna be getting the good English approximation most of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but too like the last name is Tungo Vailoa. Yeah, that's like I can do that. I can do that. Okay. So anyway, Tom, he's gonna be throwing the ball, and they, it's really similar, I think, to the offense, to like the Chad Kelly, Ole Miss offense. They are going to the big thing that they did under Freeze is that they really used the entire 53-yard width of the field. They took advantage of everything. And you see that, with this offense too. Somebody pointed out to me, like, because I've been sort of gifting the offensive plays for their first 2 games. And somebody pointed out to me, everything really is outside the numbers. And I agree. You really see that most of the areas where they stress against you is outside the numbers, or sometimes, especially with AJ Brown, between the numbers and the hash marks. Very, very, very little actually between the hash marks.
Yeah, I mean it's a really like Hugh has put his own spin on this offense, because this really is Hugh Freeze's offense exactly.
Right.
I mean, I forget who the coordinator is now. Phil Longo, I think is his name.
Yeah, Longo, yeah.
I forget what his like lineage is, but this offense really is an air raid. It's a very classic air raid, which means you're gonna be throwing tons of screens and deep shots and stuff. It's not like a full like NFL type route tree, that type of thing.
Yeah, and you see that, right? So. Okay, so that's a big part.
And Longo is an air raid guy, so yeah.
Ta'amu isn't asked to do a ton in terms of like reads and progressions and stuff. I highlighted one play from the first game. It was a little third down, trips to the left, and AJ Brown's lined up into the slot. It was like third and medium, like 3 or 4 or something, and they wanted to hit him on a little comeback. And in the first game against Texas Tech, it was there. He threw it, hit him. In the second game, they covered it. Same exact play. They covered it. And you can just see like Ta'amu in the pocket, like his feet, his shoulders, everything gets out of whack the second he looks up and realizes that that throw is covered. And then he ended up throwing sort of like a desperation shot to the, down the field, and it was incomplete. So it's like, this is so often the case with these types of offenses. We know this with the Auburn offense and with the Ole Miss offense, and even like, the A&M offense and stuff. If you take away in the passing game, if you take away that initial read, and that's easier said than done. It sounds so simple when you say it, but if you take away that initial read, you're going to have a ton of success, because once that quarterback has to come off, the primary, the whole offense loses its fluidity.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's, I'm as much on the soapbox as anyone in college football and college football fandom and media about pitch poshing on NFL guys who talk down about college offenses and college players. But this is the sort of that when NFL guys talk about spread offense quarterbacks not being prepared for the NFL, this is the criticism they mean, even though they a lot of times just throw it out there without any real context or understanding of the actual players or offenses they're talking about. Tons of these offenses, particularly air raid type offenses, and that's one reason why, like Mike Leach quarterbacks and guys like that have not tended to get a lot of looks from NFL types,
despite throwing for a gazillion yards.
Yeah, is because these offenses are designed to make things as easy as possible on the quarterbacks, and all but the very best of them, when, like you said, when they lose that first read, they basically have no idea what to do from there, because the whole system is set up to give them that first read every single time, and they have a lot of success doing that. But and certainly there are ones that have have the ability to do more and have succeeded to the next level. But these are offenses that can take quarterbacks that don't have high level processing ability, like say Tua does, and put them in situations where they can still produce and still put up very big numbers.
Right. So sort of like to that end, I wanted to talk about a little bit about Ole Miss's standard down approach and sort of what Alabama's response is going to be. It's very RPO heavy. So you're going to see a lot of plays designed, packaging a run with a short throw. They experienced a lot of off coverage in these first couple games. So there was a lot of run plays packaged with little quick button hooks. That isn't going to be there as much against Alabama, because Alabama's just not going to give these crazy cushions like Ole Miss was enjoying in their first couple games. They'll also package it with screens. They'll find other ways to get AJ Brown the ball, like a lot of different things to work him in the underneath part of the field. So how does Alabama defend that? What is the defensive approach on standard down? Because there's a couple factors. The first factor is that it's package play based, but it's not really RPOs, because best as I can tell, a lot of these reads are being made before the snap. It's just a simple box counter leverage thing. So it's not a matter of him reading a conflict defender after the snap. It's just a lot of like, here are the numbers in the box, here are the numbers outside. This is what I'm going to do with the ball.
It's the type of plays that Alabama ran very heavily. And it's funny that you talk about that with the terminology. There was actually like a big debate on Twitter this weekend with.
That's why I clarified. I would normally just like sort of say like pre-snap, post-snap, just really quickly throw it out. But I wanted to clarify in light.
I think Chris Brown's terminology was that package plays is a wider base of plays, and RPOs are a subset of package plays. But
that's why I took the time. That's exactly why I took the time to clarify, because I don't want to, because in light of seeing that, like, I don't want anybody to get confused about the terminology. That's funny.
total aside here, I am not a coach, so I don't have any sway in this, but I sort of like the idea of calling pre-snap RPOs, if you will, package plays, because it's basically like you have one play and another play, and you decide beforehand which one you're going to run based on the box numbers. Whereas I like the terminology of using RPO for the true post-snap reads, because that puts it in line with other option plays, which option always means a post-snap read. It just usually means a run game. That's a total aside.
I like that, yeah.
But yeah, these are exactly the sort of plays you saw Alabama run a ton in 2014 and 2015 when Lane was the coordinator and Blake and Jake were the quarterbacks. The sort of thing where, Alabama's favorite one was inside zone paired with a bubble screen. But
yeah, and you're going to see that like a ton. So with Ole Miss, so the two interesting things is like okay, so or three things I would say. So first of all, how does Alabama defend the underneath part of the field? Then how successful are they with getting off blocks when Ole Miss does throw these screens? And then how does the fact that Ole Miss doesn't really want to run impact the sort of general approach of package plays? Because, Alabama could show, one strategy that Alabama could come out with here is just to play a lot of quarters, right? Show light box counts, quarters, light box counts, and just say, hey, you got, 6 blockers. You got 5 blockers or 6 blockers. We got 6 run defenders. You want to run it? Fine. Run it. Run it by all means, run it. So I think that's kind of like what I would do if I was Alabama. And then you think about how that maybe impacts Ole Miss. And that's why I could see the reason why I could see this game being more successful for Alabama defensively than has been the narrative, than sort of has been suggested, is because I think that Alabama is going to do a better job of taking away what Ole Miss wants to do on standard downs better than most teams will be able to, just as a product of the scheme that they're going to play.
Yeah, and that's I think that's really the approach I would go with, because I think that's a sound strategy in terms of, I think Alabama, particularly this year with the safeties they have, like you think about how good Deontay Thompson is at reading and reacting and like his closing speed. When you have guys like that, I think playing quarters can be really advantageous. And if, here's the thing with like a package play, right? Like that, if the defense knows you're going to run that, then you basically allow them to dictate what they want you to do.
Right.
So if Alabama decides, go ahead, run the ball, then they can show the numbers to dictate that. And then of course, so my only thought there is that the obvious counter for Ole Miss is to show those looks and then throw deep, basically, like to dare the Alabama safeties to come up and then throw over the top of them. And that's where,
we're going to see that a lot.
Yeah, right.
So they do that a lot, right? Just generally, they do that a lot. This year, they take a lot of deep shots down, sort of down along the boundaries. And how did they beat Alabama in 2014 and 2015? How did they stay close in 2016? They just big plays, right? They just threw the ball up, and like Treadwell's jumping over people. Or in 2016, they had 5 guys that were 6'5", or at least it felt like that. And they were just jumping up over, Barlin Humphrey and Anthony Aver. And it was just crazy. But that's what they're going to do, right? That's, I think, what this game hinges on, is how many of those plays can they hit, because Alabama is going to challenge their standard down offensive efficiency way more than most teams will be able to do that. So the game is going to turn on how successful can they be on these sort of shot plays, right?
Yeah. It's, if you're going to look at it in from a stat perspective, you look at it in terms of the most important of Bill Connolly's 5 factors. Ole Miss is not going to be efficient in this game. Whether or not they score much on Alabama is going to be determined entirely by how explosive they are.
Right. So I should say, I don't think they're going to be efficient. Could they come out and execute this really precise intermediate passing game? I don't think so. I don't as good as this offense has been or as good as the potential is, I don't see that in this matchup. Maybe the Alabama DBs really struggle to get off blocks. I mean, really, really struggle, and you hit some plays in the screen game or whatever. Like that could happen, and it probably will like a little bit, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to approach the threshold of efficiency that
I'm saying I definitely
need.
would have had Tyrell Shavers playing scout team this week.
Yeah. And so this is the big
and
challenge.
Maybe some tight ends playing wide receiver on scout team this week.
Because the size is the big thing. And I sort of talked about this a little bit on Twitter too, is that the challenge really is going to be for the DBs and especially with the inexperience, is sort of the technical aspects of playing this position, both the physical and the technical aspects. Like, getting that jam in at the line when you're in press coverage, being quick enough with your hips on these go routes, and then like making the right decisions at the point of the catch. Like, am I in phase? Do I turn around and find the ball? Am I out of phase? Do I play the hands? And then like doing that well once you make the decision. Like, that's a lot of what this is going to come down to. So, I think back, like I'm thinking about the fact that this is Pat Surtain's first start. And I'm thinking like Tony Brown in Ole Miss in 2014.
Oh, you had to say that, didn't you?
And like, but I almost see it as a positive because, he gave up some plays in that game, Treadwell scored a touchdown on him, whatever. And these guys on Saturday, they're going to give up some plays. Like Surtain's going to give up plays. Savion Smith's going to give up plays. But like, the one thing that can happen to so many players, right? You're playing on the road and you're sort of, inexperienced or whatever. The offense makes plays. Like, you just got to play the next play. And Tony, to his credit, like he kept battling that day. Like he kept playing the next play and he was competitive and he made some plays on his own. And, you just got to play hard. And as long as if you're Pat Surtain and you're Savion Smith, and this probably goes without saying, but it can be really difficult in these spots, especially for these college athletes. Like, you just got to play the next play. You just got to compete. You just got to play the next play. If they catch a 50-yard jump ball on you, they catch a 50-yard jump ball on you, and you move on. You make a play the next time.
Again, an area where you hope the family factor for Pat Surtain kind of helps him out.
Yeah. And I think that like. Yeah, I don't know how many points Ole Miss is going to score. We'll get score predictions in a little bit, but I think they'll play. I think they're going to be competitive. Like, I think they're going to be competitive against these deep balls. I think it's going to be a mixed bag, and how many they hit probably determines just how competitive this game is, right? Do you guys want to say like anything else about the matchup? I mean, I don't know if we're kind of near the end here, but like, Mitch, did you have any thoughts, like just generally on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like anything that kind of invites them to run a little bit more because they're just not going to be efficient running the ball. And I think Deontay Thompson's emergence as like kind of an elite center fielder is going to help mitigate some of the downfield stuff too.
That's interesting. Yeah. So that's interesting in terms of like if he's playing single high, like the range he can have to sort of get over and either impact throws or discourage throws. And maybe they'll play some combo coverages and like, they'll get into like a cover 2 on one side to sort of take away the deep shot that way. And then they might play quarters to the other side. So, can Ta'amu go, can he diagnose that coverage and find the side with the quarters and take a shot that way? But like, Alabama will do some things schematically to not necessarily take the deep ball away on standard downs, because if you go above and beyond to take the deep ball away, you're going to leave yourself vulnerable underneath. But they'll do some stuff to sort of try to funnel the action in one particular direction into the matchup that they deem to be most favorable. So they'll do some of that, but ultimately it's just going to come down to the kids playing well. Like the schematics will be there. You just got to play well.
This is where, we talked about this. I don't know if it was last week or before Louisville, where, when we talked about that Alabama's never going to Saban's never going to wholesale change his defensive philosophy, but there will always be matchup specific tricks
Right.
And, if you're getting into the finer points of it, this will be a game to look out for sort of the tricks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Ole Miss presents this interesting challenge because, if AJ Brown was playing on the outside, you would say, well, just roll coverage that way, right? Just roll coverage to AJ Brown's side. But the fact that AJ Brown is in the slot and then you got Metcalf on one side and Lodge on the other side, it does make it a little bit more difficult to play around schematically.
Yeah. You can't play cover 6 with the cover 2 side on AJ Brown's side because he's not.
Exactly. He's not outside.
You can't bracket him. Yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of presents a really interesting challenge. Ole Miss, it's just unique, right? Because normally oh, this team has a great slot guy. Well, he's like a Christian Kirk or something, He's not usually AJ Brown. That's really interesting. So this will be a sort of a unique challenge. And I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that's a good thing. This is about the team growing. I mean, as long as they don't lose, it's about the team growing. And
this is why I get, we've hit on all the points that led to why I said earlier, I'm sure there will be Gumps tearing their hair out if the score of this game is 56-42, but I don't really care, because if they win, then, hopefully this is a learning experience for the DBs. And I just don't I don't see their defense slowing down this offense for it to ever, we talked about plenty before the season that this could be a year where sometimes the Alabama offense is just going to have to carry the defense. And this is a game where that might happen. And I'm fully prepared for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay. People are going to think 2014 or whatever, that is going to be something like that.
I don't see that. I think the ceiling for this defense is so much higher. It's just they've had so rarely had this little experience coming in.
The thing that separates, if people are worried that this is 2014, what I would say very, very specifically, at least from a personnel standpoint, is that the safeties are very different. These safeties are really good. Those safeties, Nick Perry was just not a great player, and Landon was great, but his coverage ability has really sort of developed more at the next level than it had at Alabama.
Another side, but insane that Landon has become the player. When they let him be a box safety, he's been great, which is what I thought all along. And I remember having people on NFL Reddit asking questions about him, and I was like, hey, I'm an Alabama fan. I don't think he'll be good deep, but he'd be great box safety.
He's good everywhere.
Now he's just great. Yeah, I'm shocked that Landon has become so good.
Yeah, Landon is. I didn't see that. I thought Landon would be there was talk after his first year that he might have to move to linebacker and everything.
Yeah, pull Mark Barron.
He went from he might move to after 2015. He might have to move to linebacker, and then 2016 he's an all-pro. Yeah. How the hell does that happen? How does that happen? It's such a bizarre jump. I mean, I'm year 2, more experience. I get it, but that's just crazy. But anyways, the safeties, it was very different, and after 2014, that was really Saban's recognition, right, of the problem, is that my safeties are just not the sort of the rangy, flexible players, especially that I need for quarters coverage. And then he responded to that by moving 2 corners, Geno Smith and Eddie, to safety. And that's really, he sort of changed the way they approach that position. And that's why I don't think this is going to be 2014. The corners need to get experience. They need to play better. And the corners were a problem that year. But these corners are more talented. Eddie Jackson, Cyrus Jones, Tony, Geno Smith, these guys are, I think, more talented, at least Surtain is. So, we'll see. We'll see. But I feel good.
Yeah, same. I don't think they're going to lose. I think this one could be sort of an exhausting one defensively, but I don't think I don't think they're going to lose. So score prediction.
Barrett Sally thinks they're going to lose.
Yeah, well, Barrett Sally also picked them to lose to Penn State in the playoffs. So, I have I had a little impulse to defend him before the season when he made that Ole Miss pick, because it was just whatever.
He picked Ole Miss before the season to beat Alabama?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, it's just one of those things where it's okay, if you're looking at Alabama's schedule, you're not, chances are that they won't go 12-0. They've gone 12-0 3 times under Saban. So most of the time they don't go 12-0. But it's hard to pick one game for them. So I can essentially see, like, you just pick the teams that are good, and you got to predict one loss. So you're kind of throwing darts at the board. And Ole Miss seemed as defensible as a pick to it as any. And then he was also picking Alabama to still win the SEC and make the playoffs. I was like, oh, whatever. And then I saw his playoff picks, and he has Penn State beating Alabama and like playing Washington in the final or something. I'm like, break, dude.
I mean, like, I don't know. Like there's like, in theory it could happen, but there's just no justification. Like, that's like whatever.
Anyway, score predictions.
Okay. I'm going to go with, Ole Miss had some red zone issues against Texas Tech. I think that'll be heightened against Alabama because of the lack of like precision in the passing game. Like, you have to go through progressions, I think, to be successful in the red zone, or you have to be able to run the ball. So I think that they're going to move the ball between the 20s, but I think that they're going to have some issues in the red zone. I actually think that this game is going to go – I actually think Alabama's going to cover.
Oh, yeah. The spread's what, 22? 22 and a half?
I think that Alabama wins. I'll say 45-20.
Okay, Mitch, how about you?
Yes, I'm same range for Alabama. I was thinking like 40, 48, 13, something like that.
Okay.
Ooh. I also think they're going to cover. I think I'm bumping it up a little bit for everyone. I'm going 55-27.
Okay, so none of us have them in the 30s. That's I mean, it's possible. I could see it.
Right.
I could see it. But I think the last thing I would say about the point totals is that I think that people are overestimating the likelihood of that. Like, the way I've seen people talk about the matchup, like getting Ole Miss cracking into the low 30s, it seems to be discussed as if it's like the 50th percentile performance. I think it's possible, but I think it's more like the 75th percentile performance. Same. I think that like lower 20s is really the 50th percentile performance, or at least like mid 20s. Getting up to like the 30, 33, 34 range, that's a little extreme to me. Like, that's not like normal. Like, they would have to play really, really, really well, and Alabama would have to like not play so well. So I don't see that.
Yeah, no. I don't see that as the most likely scenario.
Right. Yeah. Let me clarify. Right. Yeah. Right. I see it as possible, like 75th, 80th percentile or so. I just don't see it as like 50 median, which seems to be where it's being discussed by some people.
And that's if you're picking a game, I think that's where you sort of take your 50th percentile performance for both teams, and that's where which is me saying that, and I just said that Alabama's 50th percentile.
Well, you're a little over.
It's 55 points, but
well, maybe you're a little. Yeah. I mean, you could be like a
percentile versus Ole Miss. I mean, I don't think that's unreasonable.
I mean, again, 40 points to Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
To the Salukis.
Yeah. I mean, Alabama, as long as like, again, all Tua needs to do is play well, and they should be scoring a lot at will. I don't know about at will, but like if Tua plays well, cracking 40 should not be a problem.
Yeah.
If Tua plays really well, and if Tua is like left in for a lot, 55 is totally within reach.
Yep.
So that's
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, y'all, and roll tide.
Roll tide.